Hello, everybody. We're going to get started with the video in just a moment. Just wanted to say hi. This is Mary-Jeanine, and I have got so much to show you today. So hang in there just a couple more minutes, waiting for a few more people to get online. So if you are online, say hi and tell me where you're from so we'll know. Yeah. All right. See you in a minute. Good morning, everybody. This is Mary-Jeanine, and I'm coming to you live from the sewing studio in Maitland, Florida, world headquarters of the Sewing Studio Fabric Superstore. I am very excited today. I've got so much to show you, so much to tell you about. Please post, let us know where you're coming from, and love questions. And if anything I say reminds you of a question, this is live, and I'm going to try my best to answer it. I've been sewing and quilting for over 30 years. I've made over 700 quilts, so I've got a little bit of experience, and hopefully I can help you with that question. Today, we're going to talk about several quilts. We're going to talk about some quick projects, and I've got a couple little tools that are must-haves in my sewing room that I'd like to share with you. And I have a favorites page, which Gabriella is helping today. She is going to post my favorites page. And then also I have a handout. So it is three pages. And so you'll want to print that out for yourself before I start talking, not about this quilt behind me, but about the other projects, free handouts, free information. So free handout, favorites page. You get a shopping discount today. So that's 15% off between now and tomorrow night online, tomorrow Sunday night at midnight. You can come in and say discount code TTNT at the register, and we'll get you that 15% discount. So lots of options. I'm really glad you're here, and I missed all those names, but just keep commenting and letting me know where you're from. I've got one quick announcement, and that is next month, September. I'm still going to do the live Facebook on the fourth Saturday at 10 o'clock, but the face-to-face is going to be on a Friday, the day before, which is, I didn't write the dates down. I want to say the 23rd, whatever that Friday is. Monday, I'll actually still be in Croatia. I'm leaving in a week or so for Croatia for 2 weeks. And so I will be back, and if you'd like to come see all of this live and in person, face-to-face, come on down the Friday prior to the fourth Saturday, and you can touch and feel and look at everything we're talking about. All right, Debbie is from the Villages, and Phyllis is from West Palm Beach. I'll be down there in January, I think, talking to the Guild down in Palm Beach County, West Washington. Thank you. And DeBerry and Fort Lauderdale. Thank you guys for showing up and coming along with me on this live thing. We've been doing this for 2.5 years now. So we are really, really enjoying bringing all this content to you free and hoping you will support us as a small local business by buying your products from us. All right. So that was my one announcement. Oh, I want to tell you about some classes I have coming up. Kelsey and I just did the schedule a couple days ago, but you know how things change because. So I just want to let you know that I will be teaching, but I'm not going to give you a date. I'm going to be teaching a curved improv piecing class. We're going to make a table runner, and no, I don't have the sample because I haven't made it yet, but it's going to be a lot of fun. If you've been in my class and I've said, oh, you have to have perfect 1/4 inch seams, this is not an improv class. Well, that's an improv class. And if you don't have perfect scant 1/4 inch seams, it's going to be okay in that class. So that's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm probably going to continue doing that on a quarterly basis. Also, a brand new class is my introduction to ruler work. So if you've been wanting to free motion your quilts with rulers as opposed to just free motion with your brain and your hands, you might want to take my ruler class. You will need to take my machine quilting class first. That's a prerequisite. And I'll be teaching it twice, once in October and once in November. And the class in November will be on a Saturday. I try to do Saturday machine quilting classes twice a year. The classes always fill up. It's a really good class. 5.5 hours of lots and lots of content. When you leave, your brain will be full, I promise. And what else? Oh, and then I have an evening class, which is machine quilting with a walking foot. And I'm also teaching that during the day. So there'll be 2 different walking foot classes. And again, the prereq for that is also my machine quilting class. I want to dive right into the content. I don't want to have to go back and talk about thread and batting and how to baste and all that. So you're going to get all that good, basic, solid information in my machine quilting class, and then come back and take my ruler class and my walking foot class. As always, I have a binding class. Oh, I'll be teaching foundation paper piecing. I try to do that once a year. I try to do my MJ's Easy Tote. So I teach you how to make a tote bag without using a pattern. And so that'll be coming up. And that's a good Christmas pattern, Christmas season thing. So come find some beautiful Christmas fabrics and make yourself some Christmas bags for gifts. And of course, my quilting basics class, I'm going to teach that once a month. So if you or somebody who needs just to get down to the basics, you want to know how to hold a ruler to cut, you want to know how the best way to press, you want to know how to get your scant 1/4 inch seam, you want to know how to baste, how to bind, everything from choosing your fabric all the way to binding is in my quilting basics class. And I do that once a month. And in December, it'll be on a Saturday. So again, if you're working during the week and you really, really want to learn how to quilt and you want to know the basics, you're going to want to sign up for that. And that'll be in December on 2 Saturdays. So, wow, we've got Caledonia, New York. I was just in New York a few weeks ago. Apopka and Maitland. Hello, Jerry and Maitland. Jerry used to work here, I believe. Or do I have a different Jerry? Sorry. Longwood, Port Orange, Miami, and Crystal River. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, I think that was all my announcements. We're going to get right to it. We're going to get to this beautiful quilt. I'm calling this at home. I've been calling this the Beast because I started piecing it 2 weeks ago yesterday. It took me 10 days to piece it. And then I showed it to the face-to-face crowd on Monday. I took it home and I quilted it and bound it last night. So I got a little binding story for you in a little bit. There is so much to talk about in regard to this quilt. And the biggest announcement is it's going to be a quilt-along, which means that every 2 weeks, I'm going to have a class on a particular row. So 1 week we might do, I think this is the second week, she called those chubby chevrons. The next week we might do the spools of thread. So every 2 weeks, generally, the holidays get in the way, we're going to have a class. You don't have to start at the beginning and you don't have to do every single one. So we will, we'll do it in the order of the book. And let me just talk about the book for a second. Here is the book. It's called Quilty Fun, and she's got the exact same quilt on the front. I use slightly different fabrics. By the way, these fabrics that I used on my quilt are from a brand new collection from Lori Holt called Prairie. I think it's just Prairie. It might be Prairie something. But we've got a couple packs of fat quarters, and they're on my favorites page. And that's what, if you want your quilt to look just like mine, you're going to want to buy the fat quarter pack. I will tell you, there's a lot of fabric in that pack. And I had probably half of the fabric left, if not a little more. So if you wanted to go in with a friend on the pack of fat quarters and then just cut everything in half, you would still have plenty of fabric to make this quilt. You'll also need 4.5 yards of the white. The book says 6.5, and I had a lot left over. In fact, I'll be making another quilt for you guys in a few months that uses all the leftovers from this. So you'll see this fabric again. Anyway, so the book, Quilty Fun, each chapter it teaches you how to make the particular thing. So for this, for example, this one is going to tell us all about butterflies, what to cut, and how many to cut, and what the letter is, and then how to make that particular row. So we're going to start at the very beginning with the 4 patches. And in fact, if you're familiar with the leader ender concept, we're going to use this row as our leader ender. So I'm going to teach you all about chain piecing and all about the wonderfulness of leaders and enders. And then you probably won't finish this particular row for a few months, maybe, because you're just going to cut, you're going to cut it all, but you're going to sew little bits of it as you go along to make all the other rows. But we're going to fill your 3 hours each time It's going to be a quilt-along. So it's going to be mostly on Thursday mornings. I got one Wednesday, but that's just the way we have a very busy schedule in the classroom. And Thursdays was what worked best for us. But if you really want some evening classes or you really want some weekend classes, let us know. Either send the store an email or send me an email, and we will try to throw in. We probably won't have as many, but at least we can get you started on the right track. And then maybe every once in a while, we'll have a class where you could just kind of catch up. You know, I fell behind on the butterflies. I don't know how to catch up. Could you help me? So we're here for you. We want to do it whatever works for you. But it's going to be the Quilty Fun Quilt-Along. So look for that. And you can sign up again for one at a time. You don't have to sign up for the whole entire thing. Hi, Brenda. And Miami and Gainesville and Williamsburg. I'm guessing that's Williamsburg, Florida, but it could be Virginia, right? Yeah, let us know. Lori, hi, Lori. I just had one of your coworkers come into class the other day. Courtney, I think it was. Let's see. Okay, so let's back to this quilt. What else did I want to tell you? So she has some really, Lori Holt designed this quilt, by the way, and the fabric. But Lori had some really great techniques, and a lot of them have to do with snowball corners and lots of 1/4-inch strips. So we're going to talk in a few minutes about this product, diagonal seam tape, and that's going to make life a lot easier. You put that on your machine, and it helps you get those perfect 1/4-inch and diagonal seams. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then the one row that I didn't make like she wanted, and Gabriella's got it right there, is the flying geese. There are many techniques to do flying geese, but I'm here to tell you, I think the one that is going to get the perfect points every time, I did not remake a single one of these, is when you use a product called Triangulations. You've heard me talk about this before. So we're going to do an overhead, Gabriella. You've heard me talk about Triangulations before. What it is, it's a CD. You put the CD in your computer. And by the way, if you don't have a CD reader, that you can buy it online as a PDF from bearpawproductions.com. But if you can buy it from us, we would appreciate that. When you open it up, it allows you to do, I'm going to take this out of the shiny bag so it's a little easier to see. It allows you to make perfect half square triangles, 1/4 square triangles, and flying geese. Today, we're going to talk about the flying geese. Somebody said when they were watching me on Monday, doesn't that take some time to take the paper off later? Yes, it does. But the good part is you don't have to do any trimming. These come out perfectly the first time. You don't have to go back and trim your half square triangles. Let me tell you, there's nothing I hate more than to have to trim out flying geese and half square and even 1/4 square triangles when I'm done sewing them. But with this technique, you don't have to do that because you sew on the lines, you cut on the lines, you're done. So I just wanted to show you a sample page. Oh, I didn't finish saying. So when you get this CD, you load it in your computer and you can print out multiple, many different sizes of, I don't know if you can see that, half square triangles, 1/4 square triangles, and flying geese. What happens is it's a file that has tons of sizes. So if you're familiar with triangles on a roll or thangles, it's the same concept. You're sewing on paper, but in this case, I don't have to go order the right size thangles and wait for them to come in to start my project. I could just print out all the papers that I need right from my computer. So that is why I love this. I've probably had this for 15 years, and I use it a lot for all my different half square triangles, 1/4 square triangles, and flying geese. So that's why I keep telling you about it, because it keeps coming up on all the quilts I talk about. So let's talk about flying geese. So I printed this on newsprint, which runs through my printer, and there's actually 4 sets. So I'm going to cut out one of the sets and use it on the sewing machine in just a moment. So there it is. And then these get sewn end to end to end, which is how I end up with that nice, beautiful, long piece of flying geese row. So let me do a quick little demo here, just in case you would like to do it this way as well. So I cut out my piece here, and it tells me the background square, and now I have to put my glasses on because I don't know if I can read it right. So the background square, I need to cut it 2 1/4. And I'll just be honest here. This is actually 2 1/2 because I had a whole bunch left over from this quilt. So I just cut 2 1/2. But if you know paper piecing, foundation paper piecing, you know that you can go a little bigger. You just don't want to go smaller. So I cut that in half. And then it says you want a 3 3/8 square for your geese color. And you're going to cut that in half diagonally twice. So if I cut that in half diagonally twice, I end up with this little guy. So now I have 4 geese here and the background for 1 goose. So hopefully that is clear. So we are going to walk over to the sewing machine and I'm going to show you how this is done. So Gabriella is going to switch cameras. All right, here we go. So I've got my triangle here for my geese and my 2 background pieces. And I'm going to set up my machine to be, and this is my little classroom machine, what I take to classes and retreats, and I'll talk about something about it in a minute. But I'm going to change my stitch length to 1.8. If you've ever done foundation paper piecing, you know that you've got to knock that stitch down. Also, oh, before I get started, I want to tell you about this light. Watch the foot. Look at the light. Look how much brighter that is. You think you've got plenty of light. You're like, oh, okay, I can see what I think I can see what I'm doing. And then you put a light on, you're like, oh, now I can see what I'm doing. As we age, they say you need 10% more light for every decade. I think it's even more than that. So I found this when I went to a quilt show while I was camping. And I installed it and I could not believe in my camper how much more light I got with this little number. So this is not this exact one, but we have a similar one on, actually both of them are on my favorites. This one is by Caterpillar and both of them, I think the reason I love it the most is it comes off easily with Velcro. And it charges with a USB. I get a lot of students coming in with all these wires hanging off their machine and it takes a while to set up. This one, it's a piece of Velcro. So in fact, if I wanted, and a gooseneck, so I can put this wherever I want it. So in fact, one time I had to go to the bathroom and I wanted to go outside of the camper. So I just took this off and used it as a flashlight to go to the bathroom and come back. So if you wanted to install multiple pieces of Velcro on different machines, you could move it from machine to machine. You just need one light. So the light, again, it's on my favorites page. I want to say it's around $27, but it is well worth it. It puts light exactly where you need it, which is what I need right now. Okay, ask questions if you got them. Faye is losing connection, seems to come back in a few minutes. Yeah, if anybody else is having problems, let us know. But Faye, it may just be your internet connection for the day. All right, so here's my goose fabric. And if you're familiar with foundation paper piecing, if you're not, you might want to take my class. But what we do here is we put the right side of the fabric facing out. And I don't know if you can see, I'm going to turn my light so you can see what, oh, there you go. Can you see that? Can you see the shadow of the fabric back there? That's what I want. You stop moving it a little bit and put a pin there. You could also use a glue stick, and I use glue sticks a lot for sticking fabric to paper, and it comes off easily. It works instantly, so glue stick is a wonderful thing. So the lines of my page are on one side, and the non-lines are on the other side. So that's why I have to kind of use the light as a guide. And now I'm going to put right sides together, put my one background side there, and now I'm ready to sew. So I'm going to hit the gas and I'm going to follow that line. My hands don't look that old in person, really. And we're going to cut this. I have a thread cutter at home on this machine. I do not. Okay, so now we could take the pin out and we can open this up. And there's the first half of the first goose. And if you were to look at it, the shadow, you can see that I've completely covered all the lines. That's what I want to do. I'm going to sew one more piece on for you. So we're going to leave that the way it is. Oh, another tool I want to tell you about. So you could jump up every time you did one of these, the ironing board, and press it. But this little wallpaper roller, which I have on my favorites page, makes really nice work of pressing that nice and flat. Somebody came in the other day with a piece of wood that was angled, and she said, would that work? And I said, it's not going to work really well when you're working with bias edges because it's going to stretch it out. But this roller just rolls right on top of it. It doesn't push your bias edge around. That's why I like the roller better. Again, right sides together, because if you think about it, once you sew that seam, you want it to look pretty on the outside. This white is so good that you could probably use either side. It wouldn't show very much. Anyway, we flip it over. We're going to check with the light. See the shadow. I could see it. So I'm going to turn my light back to where I need it. I'm going to sew one more seam just so you understand the concept. And I'm not sewing very well because it's not an angle where it's easy for me to see, but you get the general idea. So that gets folded back. And there's my first flying goose. Is it a goose or a geese? I'm not sure. Flying goose. And now the next piece, just going to show you, gets sewn here and it's going to get flipped up. And you're just going to keep building your flying goose on this paper. Again, it's going to be perfect because you're sewing on the lines. And if you're better than I am at sewing perfectly on the lines, that's probably doesn't really matter. But you want to be as close as you can to the line. So that's the basic concept of foundation paper piecing, is you're putting your fabric on one side and you're sewing the lines on the other side. So hopefully that made sense. If not, let me know. But Sherry loves triangulations. Me too. It is the bomb. So take a look. Again, if you don't have a CD player, you can go on to Bear Paw Productions and order it PDF. But we really hope you'll buy the CD from us if you can. All right, I'm going to go back to my station here where I got all this stuff. Let's see. Brenda, thank you. I love the technique as well. So that's the flying geese. I feel like I had another thing I wanted to tell you about. So I'm going to look at my quick. Oh, yes, I do. Sorry, Gabriella. We're going to go back to the machine for a minute. Let's see, grab a piece of fabric. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about something called diagonal seam tape. I mentioned it earlier. What it is a piece of it's a roll of washi tape that's very removable and very easy to lay down and pick up and lay down. But what I use it for is I put the red line where the needle is going to go. And then it shows a 1/4 of an inch on either side. What is that useful for? I don't have a perfect demo here, but if I wanted to, let's see. If I wanted to sew a line from here to the point, so Snowball Corners. Oh, I know. Let's see. I need to go. Can you? Oh, never mind. I need a square. Yes, I'm just going to exit here for just a minute. Welcome to live TV, where we do our best and we try to get ready, and there's still a couple things here and there. Okay, so let's say I wanted to do a snowball corner. And what that means is I want to sew from corner to corner. So then when I flip this over, they call that a snowball corner. And if you do it all 4 times, the purple would look like a snowball. So I want to sew from corner to corner. So Lori Holt in the book says, draw a line from point to point and then sew on the line. That's a lot of drawing on the lines. So, and there's hundreds of these in that quilt. So I'm here to save you. So instead, we are going to sew using the red tape. I didn't draw any lines. I didn't pin anything. I'm going to watch this. I put my needle down just to the right of that point, and I'm going to sew to this point. So I'm going to follow along on that red line, and actually I'm going to put that point just to the left of that red line. And if you've been with me for a while, you know why. Because you've got something called turn of the cloth. And you need to be able to, the fabric needs to be able to turn and have space for that. I'm going to cut this off. So you can see I sewed not very well because, again, I'm not as close to the machine as I would like to be, but you can see I sewed a perfect straight line by eyeballing. I kept my eye on this the whole time. I don't care what's going on with the needle. If I keep my eye on this, it's going to be perfect. And then when we roll that back, it is perfect, because something called turn of the cloth is why I need that little extra little space between the sewing line and the actual seam line. So that is why I love diagonal seam tape, which is here, and it's on my Facebook page. I'm sorry, my favorites page. And yes, you could use blue tape for some of that, but later I'm going to show you how you can do the 1/4 inch with that as well. So if you don't own a 1/4 inch seam foot, then the paper is very handy because you can guide your fabric along the line rather than trying to figure out where your 1/4 inch seam is. So back to the other spot again. And I've got a very dry throat, so you'll have to excuse me for a second. Any good questions? All right. Turn of the cloth. Yes, Jerry, the turn of the cloth means the reason we do a scant 1/4 inch, if you sewed on your quilt an exact 1/4 inch, when you turn that fabric to the front, that's turn of the cloth. The thicker the cloth is, the bigger the turn of the cloth and the smaller the seam allowance you need to get it to be exactly how much fabric on the top. Quilt designers write quilt patterns with a 1/4 inch seam, really a scant 1/4 inch. If you have very thin fabric, you probably have an exact 1/4 inch. So when you're changing the thickness of your fabric and you want to make a quilt, let's say you want to make it with flannel, you're going to need to test your 1/4 inch, a scant 1/4 inch, make sure that your finished block is the size you think it's going to be. And I managed to dribble on myself. So the turn of the cloth is that little section, that tiny little couple threads of cloth that come around and become the front of the fabric. So hopefully that made sense. Okay, so that was I think everything I wanted to say. Oh, yes, I have one more thing. Always one more thing. So last night I sewed the binding on, and by the way, this is scrappy binding using all the leftovers from the quilt. So that was fun. So I sewed my binding to the front, and then I went to go sew it to the back, and it was already like 8:30. I'm like, I really wanted to sew this to the back by hand, but I'm just too tired. So what I did is I glued my binding down, and then I started to sew, and I put a safety pin where I stopped sewing, and I can go back later and finish it. So the glue that is good for that is called Apla Glue, and it has some very sharp points for dispensing, and it's very washable. It's archival. It's all the stuff you want to know about in your quilt. And trying to cover up that spot on my shirt. Live TV, gotta love it. Anyway, so this is very nice for applique, but also I was able to glue my binding down, ironed it to make it go exactly right where I wanted it, to make it dry exactly where I want it. And let me just show you. Yeah, this is glued down. And if I were to pull really hard, I could probably, well, I can't really pull it apart. So it's glued down really well. So that's glued down. And if I were to pull up the other side, you could probably see where I have hand sewed it down. So it's not going anywhere. But that, even if you were to hand sew it immediately, it was really helpful because then you don't have to keep pinning and poking yourself with pins or taking out wonder clips or whatever. Glue it down, and then later you can hand sew it down or machine sew it down. So just a fun little thing to do to save yourself a little time and save yourself from getting poked in the fingers with pins. All right, Jerry, thank you for letting me know. That made perfect sense. So I told you about the light. The one that this is the Verilux. It comes in a yellow box. And we've got that, and you can order those and they will come in within a week or so. The caterpillars are very, very similar. They have a little cartridge that you install on your machine and then you slide it in. But you could also, I think, probably just Velcro the thing to your machine, which is what I did. What I really like is this thing is so dadgum bright. I think both of them. It's got a medium switch. So it's got a really high and then a medium and a low. So I don't know if you could see that. That's high, that's off, and there's medium and there's high. So there's a bit of a difference. So love my light. Love my light. That's my new favorite thing. All right, we are going to move on to the next quilt. So if you have any questions about this, hit me with them. So this is going to be the Quilty Fun Quilt-Along, and it's going to take 15 weeks because there's 13 rows plus another 2 days for, 2 weeks, 2 separate weeks for the border, and then probably just do some finish it up stuff too. So there's a lot going on with that. I should say that this book, once you finish the actual quilt, it's got more pages for 10 other projects. I believe it's 10. So she's got a project that just has butterflies. She's got a project that just has the apples. She's got a project that just has different pillows and quilts and different things like that. I think there's one in here that I may just have to do because I really, really like it. Love the apples. And so she's got step-by-step on how to make all of these. So you may see one of these down the road. Now I can't find it. Oh, there it is. I love the houses. I love the houses going around. And there's houses on that quilt, believe it or not, with just squares in the center. So anyway, there's a lot of value in this one book. And finally, she's got it spiral bound already. So what I did is I found myself an easel and I set this up on an easel next to my sewing machine. So I could just switch back and forth to whatever page I needed, and it was up and center where I could see. So in my supply list, it's going to say easel. It's going to be optional, but I'm going to recommend an easel. Otherwise, just put it flat and it starts to get covered by stuff, if that makes sense. All right. So far, so good. Any questions? Hello, Bradenton Manatee Patchwork. Hello, Laura. I'm guessing you came to one of my lectures at your guild. We are going to talk about this beautiful quilt next. Normally, I try to have the latest fabrics when I show a quilt. This one is actually going to be for Project Linus. And Michelle gave me a pack of jelly roll strips. So that's what I made. So this fabric is not actually available. We have very similar fabric, of course, but not this particular line. This is probably a few years old. But I saw it, and then soon after that, Michelle sent out an email that had a link to this quilt, and I fell in love with how easy it is. One of the best things about this design is there's no background fabric. So you don't have to buy a jelly roll strip and then go find some background that goes with it. This is a whole jelly roll, 40 strips, done. So I really like that idea. So you're going to follow along. By the way, if you've just joined us recently and you didn't hear me say, there's a handout link that Gabriella is going to paste in a comment. So if you want to print the handout and follow along, please do. There's also a favorites page. So the things that I've been talking about, if you're interested in purchasing them, they're on my favorites page. And we'll post that link as well. So let's get started. Excuse me a second. Grab my little demo here. Clean up my mess. All right, so you're going to divide out your jelly rolls into, I would say, lights and darks, right? And some of mine are lighter and darker than others, but that's just kind of the way everything fell out. So I have a light and a dark here. Yes, I'm going to do this demo again because I don't think I could do it often enough. Every time I do this demo, somebody says that is the best thing I've learned all week. It is a really important thing to know how to sew 2 long strips together. If your machine is misbehaving, and sometimes even our top of the line machines do this, you sew down this strip, and then when you get to the end, they're 2 different lengths. They should be the same length. Or you lift it up and it looks like a C. And if you go online or you read stuff and people say, oh, the answer to that is you sewed the first one down this way, you sew the next one up this way, and then your C's will even out. That's not the answer, because you're going to have a very wrinkly quilt that's not going to lay flat. So the answer is to make sure they feed at the same rate. What happens is with some machines, your feed dogs feed the fabric really nicely, and the top fabric is just going along for the ride, so it doesn't go quite as fast. So you end up easing in that bottom piece. If you're putting on a sleeve, that's great, but if you're sewing 2 straight lines, you don't want that to happen. So I'm going to meet you around the other side of this machine, and we're going to do a quick little demo. Put my glasses on just to be sure, and I'm going to crank my my stitch length back up a little bit. So there's my diagonal seam tape, and now I can use the black line is 1/4 of an inch away, and I can use that to guide my fabric. So again, I'm eyeballing this line. I'm not watching where the needle is going. Okay, so now I've got 2 strips of fabric. My needle is down. It's kind of like a third hand. Take my 2 strips, lay them down perfectly. I'm going to grasp. You can do this with either hand. I'm going to grasp and I'm going to twist. And now I'm going to hold that fabric taut, but not so taut that it can't sew, and not so loose that a machine can do whatever it wants. All right, so I'm about to eat my hand, so I'm going to stop and I'm going to rearrange. You can scrape with your finger a little, get it straight. Grasp, flip, and sew. And bear with me here. This is just 1 strip, and then we'll be done. So I use this technique anytime I'm sewing more than 12-inch piece of fabric. So when you're putting on your borders, when you're sewing on your last log on a log cabin, when you're sewing on your sashing, anytime you have more than 12 inches, this is a great technique. And then finally, one more time. Usually it takes about 3 passes, three grasps. And you see what I'm doing here? I'm just holding it with my fingertips, but as long as I'm holding that fabric taut, it's going to be just fine. And now I'm going to cut my thread, and I want to do a quick little pressing talk here. So we're going to go back, and we're going to talk about pressing. So Gabriella, we're going to do an overhead. All right, there's my iron, and it's nice and hot. Actually, I'm going to flip this around so I could take advantage of the length. So some of you have never been taught how to press properly. You iron, which is pushing the iron around. So I'm going to give you a couple little tips here. The first thing is we set the seam. I think the iron was turning itself off here. So it's a little warm, but it's not super hot. But we're setting the seam. What that means is you're sinking that thread down into the fabric, and then you'll have a nice flat seam when it's all said and done. If you have a pressing board that has lines on it, this is a really good time to use those lines to be able to press nice straight lines. So here's what I like to do. I like to press with my hands. So if you do that, you're not going to have any curves where that iron curves, and you're not going to have any pleats. Quite often in my class, people press and they come and they say, why isn't fabric wide enough? Well, because it has a pleat there, because you didn't push it hard enough back. So that's all we're doing here. And it's if you wanted to even just warm it up again, so then when you press it open, it's going to get super flat. And then one more time, press this. I keep getting caught here. Press this. And then I'm going to cut this piece. If you're following along in the handout, Gabriella put the handout link, and I would encourage you to print that out, or at least follow along on another screen. And that's all the ironing I'm going to do, I think. Put that away. Now we're going to cut. And before I cut, I want to talk about rulers for a moment. If you've been in my class for the last month or two, I've been going nonstop about the Quilter Select ruler. And Kit asks, how come you don't have the triangulation products on your favorite page? It is on there. So click on the link that Gabriella just put up there at Mary-Jeanine's favorites, and it's at the very top, I promise you. So 2 different lights on the favorites. What is different? One is on pre-order. So if you really like the one that's actually on my machine, it's the Verilux. That's the yellow box, and you'll need to order that. This one, we have a few on the page. More are coming on Monday, and then you can also order as well. But the first one you'll have to pre-order. This one is coming up. Okay. So, but they're about the same. Mine, yeah, they're pretty much the same. I think the one that's available is a couple dollars cheaper, but I like them both. All right. Hopefully that answered it. And greetings. Hi, Janet. Haven't seen you in a while. Okay, so I want to talk about rulers. This one is from Quilter Select, and I've got it upside down. And the reason I absolutely love this new line of rulers, it took me a while to finally realize it. We've had them for a while, is the whole back is tacky, and you put it down and it stays. It's not going anywhere. Whereas most of the other rulers, I just happen to have one from AccuQuilt here, but it's kind of shiny on both sides. So if you are in the market for a new ruler, and to be honest, I've had my 6x24 ruler for so long, I could barely see the lines on it. I have decided I'm going to treat myself to a new Quilter Select. I had Kelsey put a bunch on order. I'm hoping they're going to be here by Monday. So you can pre-order, or you can pick them up when you get here. But this makes a huge, huge difference, the Quilter Select. But I've got another tip for you. Let's say you're not in the market for a new ruler, but some of your rulers are kind of mushy, they slippery. So we have a product called Maker Tape, and they've got some really cool ideas on the back for things you can use it for. You can put it on your ruler to keep your ruler, which is what I'm going to show you in a minute. You can hold things down like your zippers, or like you would for washi tape. You can again hold things down if you want to glue it while you're gluing them while they're drying. And then finally, I love this idea. So if you've got a tool that's kind of slippery in your hands, you could wrap it around that tool and it would hold on to it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn to the back, and let's do an overhead, Gabriella. I'm going to turn to the back of the ruler, pick up some of my Maker Tape. And I love this because it just used my fingernail, my non-existent fingernails, and I could just lay this down. This is plastic tape that's got a bit of a grippy on it. So I'm going to probably put one way and one the other way. And now this ruler is going to be a lot grippier. You can put a lot more pieces, of course, but I'm going to go ahead, since I have it right here, I'm going to go ahead and use my Quilter Select ruler that I love. I love coming in here and using this ruler. I'm setting this down a little bit only because if I put the seams right on top of each other, it gets kind of wobbly. But if I come down a little bit, then I don't have to worry about things wobbling. Okay, so if you follow along on the handout, which I so carefully wrote, we sewed our 2 pieces together, and we're going to cut each piece. There's going to be 3 13.5-inch pieces. Probably the easiest way to cut a 13.5-inch piece, once I trim off the selvages, is to use my 13.5 line on the ruler, which is right there. So we're going to give that a cut. It's handy when you're ambidextrous, but if you're not, I know you're smart enough to be able to figure out how to do that. That was 2 pieces. We're going to cut 1 more piece, 13.5. There it is. Okay, and of course I'm lining up here. Did I go up too high, Gabriella? Okay, let's do another overhead shot. Now I'm going to take these 3 pieces and I'm going to sew them back together. All right, you with me so far? This quilt was not made with a bunch of tiny little rectangles. Let me promise you that. So through the magic of television, here it is. Get rid of those. And here it is. I've sewed them all together. Everything is pressed to the dark side. And now let's follow along. I'm going to cut my piece into 3 equal pieces at 4.5, 4.5, 4.5. We're calling that AB, AB. So I'm going to take my handy dandy ruler and find my 4.5 inch line, make one cut, 4.5 inch line, make another cut, and guess what? Don't go anywhere. Check it out. There's my block. Isn't that awesome? I love this so much. So yes, this is an 18 3x6 18 patch quilt. And then if we get a larger shot here, there it is. I used all 40 strips to make 18 patch blocks and then sewed them together. Another way to sew them together, I didn't bring an example, but you could come back up here. You could take a block and you could turn it 90 degrees. So then you don't have any seams to match along the edges. You would checkerboard them. So every other one would be turned 90 degrees. So I hope you like that. I hope you try it. I bet everybody watching this today has a jelly roll that you could use. So give that a try. Yeah. Any questions? Judy, I love notions too. Yeah, the Quilter Select, Lori, the Quilter Select is a game changer. I've been saying that a lot lately, but some of these notions that are coming out lately, they really are game changers, including the Mister. I forgot to talk about this earlier, but when I got that pack of fat quarters for the previous quilt, and you open up fat quarters and they have these hard creases in them, and you've got to get them out before you start cutting, right? So I took my Mister at home, and I'm just going to show you. You can't even see it. It's such a fine mist that it goes down into the fabric instantly. Thank you, Janet. It is quick and fun. So I'm going to take my Mister on my fat quarter, and I'm going to mist it well. Literally, I took my hands and I pushed the mist into the fabric, or I really should say I pushed the wrinkles away. The wrinkles were gone just with my hands. And yes, I used my iron just to kind of dry up all the water, but it really is an amazing thing. We're talking game changer. This is also on my favorites page. Everybody should have one. Everybody I tell to buy one, they come back the next time and they're like, you're right. It is a game changer. I love my Mister. So my only problem with this is a little top heavy. So when I'm storing it on my ironing board, I usually store it flat. Or if I have a little cup holder, I will put it in the cup holder, because if it's top heavy, it will fall on the ground and then it'll break the top. So you got to be careful with that. But yes, it's refillable. I usually put water in mine. Some people like to put Best Press in it. To be honest, now that I've started using this, I rarely use starch. I rarely use Best Press, because the Mister is so good at getting rid of the wrinkles. Now, if I'm going to be cutting a lot of weird angles with a rotary cutter or my AccuQuilt machine, and I want to be sure the fabric doesn't stretch, I will use starch, but I have a separate, spray bottle for starch. I don't want to put starch in here because I feel like if it gums it up, I might forget and go for a trip or something and come back and it's stuck for good. So I'd rather just keep water in this, but some people do put Best Press in it. All right, so that is the other game changer I wanted to tell you about, the Mister. I bet most of you have them, because we've been talking about them for a while. We are going to move on. If you don't have any questions about the 18 patch quick block, we are going to turn the page. Kathy wants to know the finished size of this quilt. Oh my goodness. You're going to have to do the math for me, because 6 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 2 is 10, times 6. So this is 60 inches. So that's probably 40 inches. So if you put a border on it, it makes it even nicer and bigger. But yeah, that's like, again, one jelly roll. So that'll make 40 by 60. Hopefully that helps. All right, we are going to move on, unless you have other questions. And I'm going to move this iron out of the way, because if you know me, I'm gonna hurt myself. Oh, quick story. My husband had some people over last night playing poker, and somebody brought us some Croatian wine. So of course we had to drink it. And he brings me a glass of white wine, and I put it way behind my chair. This morning, I lifted up this quilt from the floor, and the glass of wine was underneath the quilt. And I don't know how it didn't get knocked over. So God is with me today. So yeah, no big white wine or red wine stain on that quilt. Phew. All right, so we're going to talk about checkbook covers. If you have been with me for a while, you may have seen this technique for a pot holder. Last time I talked about pot holders, I got a lot of response back. Everybody wanted to tell me how much they love making pot holders for everybody. This is a very similar technique. If you've never seen the pot holder and you want to, go on YouTube, and we have written descriptions, by the way, of all the shows, all these tips, tools, and techniques shows are on on YouTube. We've written descriptions of what it contains. So you can go back and say, oh, I want to know more about the pot holder. Oh, I want to know more about that particular quilt. I want to know more about that notion, whatever it is, and you can click right on it and watch. So, and I have done this before, so some of you may recognize the checkbook cover, but it bears repeating because it is a good one. What the heck is a checkbook cover? Well, here's a finished one. It holds, you remember those things called checks where we used to write checks to people? Well, I don't know about you, but we still have a checkbook, and maybe 1 or 2 checks a month, but it happens. So here I put all my deposit slips, actually. So when I pass this around, if somebody wants to deposit money in my account, that's fine. There's no checks in here. And then, of course, the register up at the top. If you want to put a pen, they make pens that are, it's a non-sewing tip, but they make pens that won't wash off your checks. This is not one, but I think Uniball makes it, and it's check safe or security or something. But anyway, you write a check and nobody can wash that printing off. And so I only use that for writing checks. And then finally, if you wanted to keep it closed, there's a little button here with a little hair tie, which you don't have to have, but it's nice if you want it. So that's what a checkbook cover is. And now that you've seen that, let's make one. I've got some other demos here, but we'll talk about those in a minute. So what do I need? From fabric A, which is the outside, you are going to need your piece 7 by 7 and I can't even read without my glasses. 7 1/4. Yes. And then also from that same fabric, you're going to do a couple flaps, and those are going to get folded in half and pressed. Those are for the inside flaps to hold your little papers, right? So there's 2 of those. From the contrasting fabric, if you want a pen pocket, you're going to cut your pen pocket that size, and then you're going to cut your magic lining, which is 7 by 5 1/4 or half, whatever. So those, oh, and then finally, we also need some fusible interfacing, which is what this is. The shiny side means that's the fusible part. So the first thing we're going to do is to fuse that down on the wrong side of my front. Okay. So we'll just follow along here. You're going to press that. You're going to press your flaps in half. All right. Then we're going to sew. If you want your pen pocket, you're going to sew your pen pocket on now before you do any assembling. So there's my pen pocket. You can read all about that. And then we're going to layer. So here, I'm down to the layer part. Do I want to hide my check info? Yeah, let's close that. Actually, that's a really old, it's probably Bank of America. Yeah, I don't even have that account anymore. So there you go. Don't get me started on Bank of America. All right, so we're going to layer the front right side up. All right, get rid of everything else. We are going to put, if we want a little bit of elastic, we're going to tape it to the lower edge, which is down here. And by the way, this is a really good time to use Scotch tape rather than a pin or a Wonder Clip. So I'm really a big fan of taping things down. These things, it's really hard to sew something like that down. So tape really holds it. And then you can just tear the tape off when you're done. 2 inside flaps, 1 on the upper half and 1 on the lower half. So again, those are my folded in half. So I'm going to put the fold toward the inside. And then all the raw edges are along the edge. So there's my raw edges, and they go along here. Okay. And then finally, the last bullet under layers is my magic lining, right side down, situated so the sides reach the front A edges and the top and the bottom don't reach. So we're going to do it like that. Oh, and there's my pen pocket that I sewed and didn't put on. Okay. So front, flaps, magic lining. I'm going to line that up a little bit, and the little circle if you want, the little elastic. The thing that I love about this project is you're going to sew all the way around. You're not going to leave a turning out hole. Okay, so that's done. And here it is, the magic of television. It's already done. It's even a little cockeyed, and that's okay. So everything's sewn around. Here's the magic. I'm going to lift this up, and we're going to flip this right side out once. And then right side, the flaps are on the right side out. And we're done. There's my check holder right there. And it's magic because I didn't have to leave a turning hole. Yes, I could poke these out a little better, and I should, but you get the idea. And let me show you some mistakes I made so you won't make them. There's a checkbook cover. You just have to give it a good press. Sew your button on if you so desire. I made one here out of selvages, so that's kind of fun. But I want to show you some of my mistakes because I pulled these out of the trash can because, yeah, you need to know about my mistakes. So this one says, oops, the corners are too rounded and I can't fit my checkbook in there. So make sure you have nice straight corners on your checkbook cover. This one, what did I do wrong? Oh, the has a too skinny pen pocket, and I forgot the elastic loop. So that's way too skinny. So I gave you better numbers so you can actually get a pen in there if you so desire. If you have a big fat pen, of course, you're going to need a wider piece. And then finally, what did I do wrong here? Oh, this one won't work because the loop was sewn on the top instead of the bottom, which means my button would be down here, which means it would be hard to write checks with a big old fat button underneath. So you want your button up here and your loop down here. So anyway, learn from my mistakes and don't do it like that. So if there's any questions, love to hear about the checkbook cover. And if you want to know more about the pot holder, which is a very similar concept, then go back and watch that. It's also a good pattern for a pocket calendar. Yes, if you use pocket calendars, you're right. It is a good idea. Somebody also said that's how they make book covers when they have a paperback book. They can make the book covers. And Robbie says, when I use a jelly roll, I can never get the pink edges straight exact with each other. Ready to give up on jelly rolls. First of all, some jelly rolls don't have pinked. What you're going to have to do is measure. If you have a pinked jelly roll that has zigzag edges, you're going to need to put it down on your mat and measure it and figure out where the 2.5 inches lie, right? Sometimes it's in the middle of that pinked edge. Sometimes it's on the outside. Sometimes it's on the inside. So you got to figure out where it is. And then I wouldn't bother slicing them off because that makes a big mess. I would just be cognizant of where that 2.5 inch line is on those pinked edges. So don't give up on jelly rolls, or cut your own. You can always cut your own. Nobody's saying you have to use the pre-cut ones. It's just we like pre-cuts because half the work is done for us. Yeah. All right. Hi, Shirley. I love that idea too. Okay. One more demonstration for you. Hang in there. We're almost done. And I have to get a sip of water. I should have drunk a whole bunch before we got started. All right. All right. So my final one, if you'll turn the page, is the marble maze toy. When my kids were little and I would bring them to mass, and it was really difficult to find a little fidget toy thing that would keep their hands busy that didn't make noise. And so when I saw this technique or this toy on a tutorial ages ago, I fell in love with it, and I've been making them ever since. What is a marble maze toy? There is, if you look on this page, I've got some different maze ideas here, but it's basically a bag, 2 sides of fabric, no interfacing, nothing else. And there's a marble here, and I have sewn a maze so you can just simply run your finger around and move the marble around from place to place, depending on the maze that you sewed. So it is kind of addicting, I have to say. And we were talking at the face-to-face on Monday, and we were saying this would be good for fidget quilts or fidget ideas for people who are with Alzheimer's and dementia, and they got to keep their hands busy. And that's the idea behind fidget quilts, which some people make a lot of as a charity thing. This would be a good fidget thing too. It doesn't make any noise. It can't hurt anything. You could make it big enough to be on a lap, but it's just something fun to play with. You can use Minky. So it's got that textural thing going on. I don't know about you, but my daughter loves anything soft and she loves texture. And so I made something like this for her to just play around with. So yeah, so you can't even see the lines, but they're there. Let's see if you can. I've got one you can see the lines of. Not really. I should have done one that had dark lines so you could see it. But basically, I've used some of these different ideas. So I'm sure you can figure out exactly how we make this. Take 2 pieces of fabric, sew all the way around except for a turning hole. And here's a tip for you. Once you start sewing, and by the way, don't ever start anything like this in the corner because it's hard to get the corner to look right at the end. So I always put my hole somewhere on a side. So we sew all the way around. If you're worried about accidentally closing it up, I like to put 2 pins at the end. So when I'm sewing, I'm like, oh, what are those 2 pins? Oh yeah, I'm supposed to stop there. And then I don't accidentally finish it up. Anyway, so we finished it up like that, flip it right side out. And then you don't even need to top stitch it closed until you're ready to sew your maze. And here, of course, is the maze. I tell you, you don't want, you want to sew your maze at least, it looks like about 1 1/4 inches, 1.5 inches. You might want to test your marbles to see if you have a larger marble or smaller marble. But these smaller marbles are good for about 1 1/4 inches, 1.5 inches wide mazes. You can buy these at, florists for the bottoms of containers. If you came to my face-to-face, I would have them for you to grab a handful for free. So you got to come to my face-to-face. We have, by the way, when you come to the face-to-face, tips, tools, and techniques, it's the same content. You can ask questions, you can feel. I send all the demos out into everybody can feel it and look at it and see it up close and personal. We have door prizes, gift cards. People bring nice items that we can give away as door prizes. We have show and tell, and we have a shopping discount. So it's a lot of fun. If you're able to come, if you feel comfortable, you can always wear a mask. But if you feel comfortable with 40, 50 people in a room, we'd love for you to be there. We have a lot of fun. Don't forget this weekend, all weekend long online, the discount code is TTNT. You can come in today. We're not open on Sunday, but you can come in today until 7 p.m., 5 p.m., 5 p.m. Today we're open to 5 p.m. You can use that discount, shopping discount on everything you buy, not just my stuff. So without further ado, unless there's other questions, loved having you guys. Thank you so much for commenting, letting me know you're there. Love you guys. And we'll see you on the 4th Saturday of September. Take care. Bye-bye.